back to another video where we discuss U.S. immigration law topics. And today we are discussing something that we see on a regular basis with individuals who live a cross-border life, who may live in Canada, but they also have a U.S. permanent resident status. In other words, they have a green card, and they commute back and forth between the United States on a regular basis, or a lot of times they don't come back and forth very often at all. Sometimes they reside in Canada and they come to the United States for short visits every year, thinking that this is acceptable and that they're maintaining their green card. So first thing that you need to understand, that if you are a U.S. permanent resident, if you have a green card, the United States is supposed to be your permanent residence. So if you entered the United States on an immigrant visa, or you were in the US and you adjusted status and you obtained that green card, at that point you became a green card holder. The US is supposed to be where you domicile, where you lay your head, where you work, where you live. You live permanently in the United States from that point on. And you made a commitment to do so to maintain your green card. You visit Canada. You visit other countries when you're a U.S. permanent resident. That's why it's called permanent residency in the United States. If you live primarily in Canada or another country and you only visit the United States occasionally, U.S. immigration may determine that you have abandoned your permanent residency depending on how much time you've spent in the U.S. and outside the U.S., as well as what ties you've maintained to the United States. And visiting every 6 months, once a year, to keep your status, that's not how it works. You may get away with it for a time until they catch on to what you're doing and they determine that you aren't residing in the United States. When they dig into these details, the U.S. immigration authorities are going to look at where you actually live, where you actually work, where you pay taxes, to determine if you are in fact a permanent resident of the United States or if you've given up that status. So how long can you stay outside of the United States before you start running into problems? Typically, if you are gone less than 6 months, then you're not going to run into an issue. It's once you get over that 6-month time period that you're going to start raising questions from the border officers. And if you stay outside for a year or more, then depending on what your situation is, whether or not you've obtained what is called a reentry permit, then your absence of a year or more could be considered abandonment of your green card. And you would need potentially to obtain what's called a returning resident visa in order to regain your status in the United States, if in fact you even qualify for a returning resident visa, because that's only for certain situations. Not everyone can just leave the U.S. for more than a year and say, oh, I'm going to come back on a returning resident visa. It does not work that way. You're required to maintain your permanent residence in the United States, or you risk losing it. And it makes it, U.S. immigration law makes it very clear that a green card holder must present their valid green card when entering the United States. So this is where we see a lot of individuals who try to skirt the system. They come back to the United States and they do so on their passport and not their green card. And if you're doing that, number one, it's a violation if you're a green card holder, and eventually it's going to catch up to you. Eventually, they're going to put things together and identify that you're a green card holder and that you should be entering on that green card. And when they do, and they notice that you haven't been residing in the United States or maintaining your ties to the United States, then you could be in serious trouble of losing that green card. Again, if you're going to be outside the United States, and in my opinion, if you're staying on a regular basis outside the U.S. 6 months or more, I would suggest getting a reentry permit. But even having a reentry permit doesn't guarantee your reentry. You still need to maintain your ties to the United States. So they are going to look at several factors when they do this, and I call it the balancing act. They're going to look at Canada or the other countries that you visit, and then they're going to look at the United States. And they're going to look into things such as how much time do you spend in the United States compared to Canada or other countries. Do you own a home in the United States? Do you work or have a job in the United States or a business in the United States? Do you file taxes in the United States as a resident of the United States? Do you maintain a U.S. bank account? Do you have a U.S. driver's license? Are your cars registered in the United States? Do they have U.S. license plates? Do you have U.S. health insurance? If they determine that Canada is your real home, that when they look at these factors, that everything points to Canada, they may revoke your green card. If you need to spend more time in Canada, you can protect your status in the United States, but you need to do it carefully. So spend more time in the US, spend as much time in the US as you can possibly do, at least 6 months or a year. Keep strong ties to the United States by maintaining a home, bank accounts, health insurance, filing your US taxes. And if you have to be away from the United States for an extended period of time because things happen, maybe you have a sick family member, maybe you're attending school, maybe you have temporary employment abroad, then you should consider a re-entry permit. A re-entry permit allows extended absences outside of the United States for qualified reasons. As long as you continue to maintain your ties to the United States, the re-entry permit will allow you to re-enter despite long absences from the United States. So if you are a green card holder, these spending extended time outside of the United States, thinking that US is the place you visit and you still reside in another country, will put you at risk of losing your green card. And we've seen this happen recently at ports of entry, where individuals have been spending more than a year outside of the United States. They think they're just going to re-enter the United States, haven't maintained their ties, and they're forced to sign what's called I-407 with CBP and abandon their green card and give it up because they did not maintain that status. One of the best things you can do if you're a green card holder to be able to not risk losing it and to maintain your status in the United States is if you do qualify, file for U.S. citizenship. If you obtained your green card through employment or through a family member, then after 5 years, if you meet all the conditions, you could potentially qualify for U.S. citizenship. If you obtained your green card through marriage to a U.S. citizen, then you could potentially qualify for U.S. citizenship after having that green card for at least 3 years. If you spend too much time in Canada or other countries, then you need to be careful and you need to take action now. You need to gather proof of your ties to the United States. You need to take whatever actions you can to relocate to the United States, reestablish your ties, and if necessary, obtain a re-entry permit. If you have any questions about your obligations as a U.S. permanent resident, or need assistance with anything with U.S. immigration, that's what we do on a regular basis. So feel free to reach out. We'd be glad to help you with your U.S. immigration matters.